What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo back at the Fake Bench, and today I have another Spyderco head-to-head. This time looking at the Spyderco Paramilitary-2 versus the Manix-2. Now these are both kind of various versions of the PM2 and Manix-2. This is the Rex 45 version. This is the S35 VN PM2. But really, this is just a PM2 versus Manix. Both of these are the full, G10 kind of full Spyderco versions. These are not the lightweight. I mean, there's not a PM2 lightweight yet, but there's a Manix2 lightweight. But these are both the full versions. And so I thought it might be helpful to do a head-to-head just because these knives are fairly similar, I think, in size. I think fairly similar in kind of overall application, what you're going to be using them for. Similar in ergonomics, etc. And so a lot of times guys are kind of deciding between these two. And honestly, I love both of these knives. So I think they're both really, really great options. So I thought it might be fun to do kind of a head-to-head of both of these. So just to recap, these are the categories. So pocket clip, scales, overall size, that's kind of the efficiency of size and how does it carry and all that. Ergonomics, action or detent, blade steel, lock system, and the intangibles category. So let me close both of these up and we will start. I expect that some of these will be a dead tie because they are very, very similar knives. For starters, the pocket clip. So this is the exact same pocket clip on both knives. To be honest, I'm not a huge spoon clip fan. It's fine. I just haven't had it really age that well. And so I'm tempted to call this a tie, but I think practically speaking, the PM2 pocket clip is far superior for two reasons. So one of those is just the fact that you can move the pocket clip around. So you can see on the Manix, you can't put the clip up here. It is reversible, as is the PM2, but with the PM2, you can carry it tip up or tip down, whereas you cannot do that on the Manix. That doesn't really matter for me personally, but would definitely matter to some people. But the real reason that I think the PM2 wins when it comes to the pocket clip is the placement of the clip on the knife. So if you look at this, you can kind of see where the clip is placed. I'll try to put these kind of as they would carry in the pocket. But you can see that on the Manix-2 here, this clip is right at the very tip of the knife. And so what's sticking out of your pocket is about that right there. And on the PM2, it's about that right there. Now, it doesn't really look all that substantial. Really, the difference here is the placement of this lanyard tube. However, for me and how I grab the knife, this makes a ton of difference. So what I have found is that on the PM2, there's more real estate here, and there's more kind of G10 real estate with this lanyard tube here that doesn't exist here. And so what I've found is there's just a little bit of material to pull to extract the Manix-2. And for whatever reason, when I do that out of my pocket, this is kind of difficult. There's just really not much here. It's pretty uncomfortable because of these screws right here. And I have a lot of trouble pulling the Manix-2 out of the pocket. I mean, really any Spyderco with a spoon clip and G10 is going to be a little bit tough to kind of pull out of the pocket. And so you're going to need to use some force. And for me, at least, I've found that the PM2 just gives you a lot more real estate to do that. That extra grip right there, that kind of extra width really, really tends to help me. I've talked to a couple other people and they don't really notice that, but that's really honestly the first thing I noticed when I was carrying the Manix-2. And so for me, pocket clip for sure, at least in terms of the placement, is superior on the PM2. I will also say aftermarket clips are particularly good on these two knives. So I would recommend, I won't name specific brands, but you can do your own searching and find stuff. But I would definitely recommend trying out an aftermarket clip on these knives. Okay, let's see. Next up, we have scales. I'm going to call this a dead tie. This is both Spyderco's G10, which is great. It's a little bit aggressive, but I like it, and so no issues there, but both are pretty much the same thing. Next up, overall size. So you can see when fully deployed, these knives are roughly equal in size. I don't have measurements with me today. Let's see if I can get these both on camera. Let me just do this real quick. you can see that the PM2 is just a hair bigger, I think longer blade and a little bit bigger handle, but roughly these are basically the same knife. The Manix-2 I would say is probably a hair thicker, and maybe a good bit wider, but all in all, pretty much the same size. So for me personally, I think that the size of both knives are very good. When I first reviewed the PM2, I was a little bit put off by how big it was. But that was because I was used to carrying a Delica and some other smaller knives. And so when you compare it to those, it is massive. And it's not necessarily a knife that gets a ton of pocket time, but it is a heavy duty kind of work knife. And I think that the Manix-2 is very, very similar. For me personally, I would probably give the edge to the PM2, although I think that they're very, very close. Really the reason for that is that, sorry, that's gross. Really the reason for that is that it's just a little bit thinner in the pocket. This is just a little bit wider through the body of the knife, and so it doesn't make a ton of difference, but you know, it does feel a little bit heftier. I think probably too because of the lock system, and it feels like you have a little bit extra steel in there. For me personally, even though the PM2 is a little bit bigger, I do like the overall profile a little bit more than the Manix-2. Although I think you get something for that with the Manix-2, which I'll talk about, and I will talk about it right now because we're time for ergonomics. So ergonomics of both of these are fantastic. I mean, obviously the PM2 is you know, got a long history of good ergos, and I think they're absolutely fantastic. But the Manix-2, I mean, that's the thing about the Manix-2. You can't beat those ergonomics. I don't love this little kind of pointy cutaway here. I think the hump on the PM2 is much better. But I mean, you cannot beat the Manix-2 when it comes to ergos. I've heard the lightweight version is really, really good. But the full version here is just fantastic. I mean, that's the thing that really drew me to the knife. It's really comfortable pretty much in any grip that you put it in. And so again, while both of them are excellent, for me, the advantage goes to the Manix-2. All right. Action or detent. So this one's going to be a little bit interesting, and I always have a little bit of difficulty between this and the lock system. So for the lock system category later, I'm really going to talk about which lock I prefer and which one I think is stronger. For the action detent, this is kind of more of a subjective, which one's more enjoyable, smoother, you know, which one is more practical. And for that, I'm also going to go with the PM2. So PM2 is a compression lock, as you can see from here, which is a very tried and true classic lock from Spyderco. It's very fidgety. You know, it's there's a reason that it's used on a ton of their knives. It's safe to use. It just drops shut. Excellent lock. Really, there's not much that you can say bad about the compression lock. The Manix-2 has, and I'm of course blanking on the name right now, but it's kind of this ball lock. I forget, but essentially it's like a cage ball right there, and you can see that spring system right there. I'm sure as soon as I finish recording this video, the name will come to me. But you basically compress that spring, and it allows for it to drop free. And so it's a good lock. It has the same benefit of being able to drop shut without your finger in there, which is a nice thing, and it's a very strong lock. For me, however, it's a little bit hard to use. It's very cool, but the compression lock, it just flies open and you can easily drop shut. This one is going to be a slow open, which I don't mind at all. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. But when it comes to disengaging the lock, the spring tension on the spring bar, while I don't think it could really be any looser than it is, it just makes it a little bit difficult to compress, and so I end up kind of gripping down here in a weird way, and it's hard to do for me, and so it's not necessarily an enjoyable knife to open and close in my opinion, although I do really like it, if that makes sense. Let's see, the blade. So let's go to the blade. So if you look at these two kind of blade profiles, these are two pretty classic Spyderco profiles. You have something here that is used on the Delica, the PM2, There's lots of other ones. I'm just blanking on them now. And then you have something here that's more of a leaf style blade. The Chaparral comes to mind. I'm blanking. I'm looking over at my box right now. But two kind of classic Spyderco, one leaf style, one thinner kind of classic style. For me personally, I like the leaf style blades a little bit more. Just there's a little bit more bulk to them. I'm a little bit less worried than breaking off the tip as I am here on the PM2. That said, the PM2 is an excellent blade. I think that there definitely are benefits to having a little bit thinner tip down here, and so I don't really think you can go wrong. I don't know. It's really just a matter of personal preference. But even I said like the profile of this one I like better, and then part of that's because it doesn't have a wide blade like the Manix-2. I'm gonna go Manix-2, but that's really just a matter of preference, as are really all the categories. All right, let's see. Steel. I'm gonna skip this one. It's really not useful to judge steel against steel in a video like this because there's so many different options for both the PM2 and the Manix-2. I mean, these are really just picked because I wanted something a little bit different, but you can get really any steel option you want. Lock system. So I mentioned this one a minute ago. So lock system, I'm going to go benefit to the Manix-2. While I don't love the way that it practically works, I find it a lot less enjoyable to use than on the PM2. I love this kind of ball lock, and of course I can't remember the name of it, and it'll hit me in a little bit, so maybe I'll put it in the description. But I love this system. I just think it's a really cool system. It's very smooth. It pops open, and I think it's incredibly strong. I'm not really a lock expert. I think both of these locks would be really strong. This one I think may have a slight advantage, but I really like this system. I just wish it was a little bit easier to operate, and maybe it will be on the Manix-2 lightweight. So I would give the advantage for me personally to the Manix-2 lock, but they're obviously, like I said, they're both really fantastic locks. So it's a dead tie right now, and that leads us to the intangibles category. So this one will really be the winner. And when I think about these two knives, I think about which one am I grabbing? Which one am I grabbing when I need a large Spyderco? And I, for a while, had owned the PM2. This is my second one that I've owned. I've always wanted a Manix-2, so I purchased this one. And so for a long time, I just loved the Manix-2. I loved how ergonomic it was. I really enjoyed the knife in general. But what I found is that I just don't find myself carrying it. If I need a larger Spyderco, I tend to go to the PM2. And I don't really know why that is, but if I had to guess, it's probably the compression lock. It's probably just an easier lock system. It's kind of a more tried and true knife for me personally. I think that there's a reason that it's so classic, and it's kind of a gold standard of Spyderco as a company. The Manix-2 is an incredible knife. I love the knife, but it just doesn't have the same staying power in my collection as the PM2 does, and that's been really surprising for me to find out. And so I don't really know what this means for you, but for me, this was very interesting to kind of put these head to head over the past couple months and then do a video filming and kind of see where it came out. So maybe this has been interesting to you, but either way, I will see you next time.